I dropped out of Harvard Med School to become a sommelier, worked in Michelin restaurants for a decade plus. Started Nomadica to bring the young consumer back to the wine category, make wine fun again. I thought because I worked in restaurants, this is going to be so easy to sell a product. Has not been. I mean, I was laughed out of almost every room until this one guy, Bob Lindquist. And I was like, Bob, I want to do this. He's like, let's do it, kid. I'm all about it. He's like, so one of our first wines we ever did was French Camp Vineyard Syrah in a can. I don't do this for money. I do this because I love wine. And no one can compete with that.
Hey friends, welcome to Above the Fold podcast. I'm your host, Jess Servion. We're going to be talking about everything in your customer's journey. You're going to learn things about customer experience, brand experience, and marketing secrets that help you drive your brand success. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's get into the episode.
Hey everyone, before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something important. Our guest, Kristin Olszewski, recently lost her home in the devastating LA fires. And while she's here today to share her journey and insights, we also want to take this opportunity to support her in any way we can. As you listen, we'd love for you to not only enjoy the conversation, but also consider supporting her brand, Nomadica Wines, and donating to the relief efforts linked in the show notes. Every little bit helps as she and so many others begin to rebuild. Thank you for being a part of this community. And now let's get into the show. Welcome back to another episode of Above the Fold podcast with me, Jess. I'm so happy you have joined us this week because I have a dope, baddie female founder that I can't wait to introduce you to, Kristin Olszewski, founder of Nomadica Wines. I will let Kristin give her own introduction because she is a baddie.
God, I'm blushing. So happy to be here, and we're going to enjoy some of my wine. I dropped out of Harvard Med School to become a sommelier, worked in Michelin restaurants for a decade plus, some of the best in the world, in the country. And when I was working for Nancy Silverton at Osteria Mozza here in Los Angeles, she had just been on Chef's Table, and it was like the first time in my life that basically not, 50-year-old white dudes were coming in to talk to me exclusively. As a sommelier, you really have one demographic, and that's pretty much it. And for the first time, young women were coming in, people my age, a more diverse crowd. And I noticed they didn't want to drink wine.
Interesting.
So started Nomadica to bring the young consumer back to the wine category, make wine fun again. Let's get people drunk again. Let's bring the sexiness back to life. Yeah.
I love that. I grew up in the Bay Area. So for me, I actually remember being a kid and my dad would drink his wine and it would be the last sip of his red wine. And I'd be and I would try to take it from him from the table just because I thought it was grape juice. You know what I mean? But I grew up with wine in my life. But you're right. Not a lot of people, it kind of fell off and then it came back.
Well, yeah. Well, now the wine industry is in a panic right now because they're losing market share. Numbers are down in a scary way, and they just haven't really innovated. They haven't talked to people. I think they've kept people out, candidly.
Yeah, it's very pretentious.
It's very pretentious, and it's the oldest living beverage. Humans have been drinking wine for millennia. It's grape juice.
Yeah.
It's fermented grape juice. We don't need to be so precious about it.
Calm down.
Yeah.
Make it pretty,
good.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just drink it. Do you like it? Great. That's all you need to know to enjoy wine.
I love it. Okay, well, I want to talk more about Nomadica, but I actually really want to start a little bit more into your journey. So Harvard Med School. You left to go and be a sommelier. What was your draw there? What were you fuck this, I'm going to do this?
Well, so I was miserable. My undergrad degree is in sustainable agriculture and English literature. So I was not the most career-oriented person in my undergrad, but I feel like it was a precursor to my wine life. And, I went back, I did a pre-med post-bac at Harvard and got into school there. I was doing an internship at Dana-Farber Cancer Hospital at the time. I thought I wanted to be an oncologist. And it was really not for me. I was, interesting timing to say this story, but it was really disheartening and disappointing to see how the modern medical system functions, how people have to choose between essentially going into debt or living, how you see doctors change patients medication just because that pharmaceutical rep took them on vacation that year, and not necessarily because it's the best for the patient. It just wasn't for me. I didn't love it. And at the time I was dating a pastry chef who's now a pretty famous person, and he was obsessed with his craft. Like, he would work 1 million hours a day and come home and like read cookbooks and, you know, obsessively research new technique. And I was just so jealous of that. I was like, what's like that for me? And wine was always like that. Like, I waitressed to pay for school. In the summers, I worked on this little island off the coast of Massachusetts called Nantucket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
My whole family is from Boston, but specifically like Natick.
Oh, I know Natick. Yeah.
my mom and my aunt went to like Natick High. Like, my grandmother had like park the car in Harvard Yard, like type of accent, like deep Boston.
Love it.
But they also had, this is going to sound so New England too, a vacation home in Nantucket.
Yep. Maybe I did their wine. Well, Nantucket's such a cool place because I worked at this restaurant that Julia Childs was the opening chef at. It had been there since the 70s. The owner was a massive wine collector, so it had this really deep collection of Burgundy and Bordeaux, which are, you know, two of the most expensive regions outside of Champagne available in the world. And so the 1% vacations, they're super generous with their wine. I got to taste crazy awesome stuff, and I decided to just leave school and like be happy. I think I used to ask everyone for advice because I was so insecure in my own decisions. I was one of those people that would, like, you know, if I met you on the street, I'd be like, hey, what do you think about my life? What do you think I should do? But I started qualifying it a little bit more. I started to only want to take advice from people whose lives I wanted. I looked around and saw so many older people who were in miserable marriages, hated their job, hated their existence. And they were the people that were like, don't leave school, stay in school. You're the first person in your family to go to college. Like, you'd be stupid to leave. And one person who I just endlessly admired was like, fuck it, leave school. Go. Yeah. You love wine. You're great at it. Yeah. Go pursue that.
I love that. I love that. You know, completely like off this conversation, but just like something I've been like talking about with one of my colleagues, like at my agency. Her name's Keaton, and she's like our social media manager. Like, she's still in college right now, but like I'm really been trying to like mentor her and like help her get like on her next direction. I have a lot of conversations with her because she's so much younger than me, and one of the things that took me a really fucking long time to figure out is like I was always working these jobs and chasing these paychecks and chasing this title or chasing this money, and all the things that I was doing, I was just never passionate about it, but I was doing it because you feel like you gotta go and do it and do the thing. And only in the last year, when I started doing like my own founder journey with like my media stuff, my event marketing, but also my agency, and I'm also starting a CPG brand. Yeah,
you're crazy, but okay.
I love it. I'm psychotic. But the one thing that has really motivated me later in my life, because I'm a lot older. I'm 39, not a lot older, but it's a lot older than like my friends, my peers. But the one thing that has motivated me is the same thing that you're talking about. It's just like, I want to be passionate about it, and I don't give a fuck how much money I make. Yep. Because my abundance comes from what you're passionate about, you know? And that's like one of the reason I brought up Keaton is because it's like one of the things, like as you navigate, like, and anybody listening too, as you navigate graduating college or figuring out your career path or whatever it is, whatever you do, money is literally a construct.
I totally agree.
And I totally agree. Just do what the fuck you're passionate about.
And then I definitely have gotten in my own head over the years about competitors of mine. Yeah. And recently, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that I don't do this for money. I do this because I love wine. And no one can compete with that. A lot of people get into my space because they're like, oh, this will be a quick, easy exit. And it's like, no, how are you going to compete with me? Because I wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm thinking about wine. Yeah. I talk about wine nonstop. I am deeply ingrained in the wine community. And it's just like, has created such a quieter place in my mind where I feel like now I don't even care about what my competitors are doing.
Yeah. I think it's when you're an entrepreneur in whatever it is that you do, whether it's a SaaS company or it's a wine company or in my case, a sleep company, right? Like, I think when you become so passionate and you love it so much, you live, breathe, think about that. And you can get caught up with what your competitors are doing. And like, you can be like, oh, you know, I want to exit. I want to do these things. If you stay the fucking course and you stay authentic to yourself, consistent to yourself, you will have success, because that's where you find your abundance.
100%. I know being rich in things other than money, right? One of my amazing friends in the wine community always says that. She's always like, I love to talk about how rich I am, you know, not financially, but like rich in my community, rich in friends, rich in my job, what I'm creating. And so I think just having that mental shift is so essential.
It's so essential. It's so essential. And it's so interesting when it comes for you.
Yes.
You know what I like? Because like I said, the story I was sharing is like pretty similar, just different like paths, right? Like yours was school and like figuring out like where you wanted to be, and then figured out like where you were like really passionate about in the world, in the community that you wanted to be a part of. And mine was just like, I've worked for all these different brands. I've done all these different things. I've worked so many different jobs. Like I've worked in SaaS companies. I've done it, like worked in, you know, e-commerce. And like now my agency, like what makes me really passionate about even still staying in the brand space is I'm actually really passionate about e-commerce. I'm very passionate about e-commerce, but my biggest value, and I don't know if you would agree with like these types of values too, but like my biggest value and biggest mission for anything I create, all of my businesses, is to inspire and to create. Those are the two things at the end of it all, right? So you could pay me $1, you can pay me $100. Have I created and inspired with you on whatever it is that I touch, you know? And I actually like, and the reason, you know, I know like we're just vibing and like talking, but like I wanted to bring that up specifically because when I look at Nomadica, what I think is so interesting is like the cans that you create and that wine experience, but you also have a work of art on each of the cans. And it's I think that also has that same like sort of like mission and like value, is like you're creating a beverage, absolutely, like a ready to drink wine version, but you're also creating beauty with it the same way you would see on like these beautiful bottles in like the wine shop, right? But you're creating that same experience in what you've created, what Kristin has created.
I love that. I mean, wine has always been the pursuit of pleasure for me. And, you know, also, let's call a spade a spade. People buy wine based off of the label. I've always known that. And so I always felt like a lot of these traditional wineries try to ignore or overlook that fact. And they're like, well, people need to learn about it. And, you know, we've all seen the fancy wine bottles that are just script or like French words that no one understands. And so I wanted to make something really easy, but also communicate what the flavor profile of the wine was based on the art. So on the back of the can, I have all of my tasting notes. So I've like written all of these, and then we paired art. So the art should give you an idea about what the wine tastes like. Because if I'm standing in front of you as your sommelier telling you about the vintner's dog and the soil types and the, you know, ocean breeze rustling through the vineyard, that's going to be the best wine you've ever had. But how do we take that sommelier experience and put it on a retail shelf or on an e-commerce website? And art felt like the best way to do that.
Yeah. I'm so inspired right now in this moment because I think you're absolutely right. Like, so a lot of the things that I also talk about is like customer experience and marketing. But from the lens of how you did your branding, essentially. It's like when you were on the shelf, you will pick up this can of Nomadica and you will read the back of it, and then you're inspired to pick it up. And the other thing I want to point out, because I'm also a digital marketing girly, the QR code to the playlist. Do each cans have different playlists, or is it just like one Nomadica playlist?
So it's even more than that. So this takes you to a landing page that has the cepage, which is the type of grape, the vinification, the vintage, what you should pair with this and eat with it, and also a playlist. So when we first started, because I love the idea of synesthesia, and then recently when I saw Drops of God, that was only like further. Have you seen that show?
No.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's on Apple TV. It's about wine, and it's very playful around the idea of how wine connects with all of our senses and how we experience things.
Yeah.
And so I always loved like that playfulness with it. When we first launched, I was making all the playlists myself. And, you know, I'm from Massachusetts, so my friends are just mean.
Yeah.
And they were like, your playlists suck. You sound like I'm also your age. And they were like, sounds like you're trying to relive your glory college days.
I think that's like also an East Coast thing. I'm not going to lie. My husband is from Pennsylvania and like I'm from California and he's always like, you're too soft.
Yep. I mean, I'm married to a Californian too, you know? Yeah. We have to like meet in the middle. Yeah.
That's where I live in Chicago now.
No, literally, yes. But so luckily, my husband's brother, my brother-in-law is an incredible DJ. And I was like, John, can you help me make some playlists and curate some other Los Angeles DJs to pair with the vibe of the wine?
Yes.
So the playlists are actually good now. I can vouch for them.
What a brand experience. Hey, y'all. Quick little interruption for a message from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Nomadica Wines, a brand redefining what wine should be. Forget the outdated rules and the pretentious vibes. Nomadica is about good wine made for real life. Each can is expertly curated by a sommelier, sustainably sourced, and ridiculously delicious. So whether you're sipping at home or at a picnic or just unwinding after a long day, Nomadica wine is a damn good wine that travels with you. At Open Lake Collective, we specialize in building brands that last. From brand strategy that defines who you are, to customer experience design that keeps people engaged, to retention and lifecycle marketing that turns customers into loyal advocates, we're here to help you create meaningful connections that drive growth. Open Lake Collective, let's build a brand they love. Now let's get back to the show. I love it. Okay, well, there's way more to talk about, but I do want to crack this open because we're having an experience and we're going to describe this experience on this podcast. So I just want to, for anybody listening in or viewing, it says notes of fresh raspberry, pomegranate, bright, crisp rainwater. Why we love it. A pink libation that savors of serenity. This bubbly rosé tastes like the inside of a waterfall. Little droplets of mineral water interspersed. Why can't I say that word?
Because it's hard. I mean,
interspersed.
No one's ever read the back of my can out loud to me. I'm like, oh my God, my writing.
You're having your own brand experience. With the fresh, pure juice of just picked red raspberries. Okay, let's crack it open.
Okay.
I'm just used to doing that with cans. I also have really long nails, so hold on.
No, me too. I have the Gel X. They're good for
Gel X, baby.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. I feel like I just drank crisp rainwater. But it's also because it has like the seltz. It's the bubbly rosé, right?
Yep.
So it's like in rainwater. It's like the sensation of like it falling on you, right?
Well, I always think about, because where I grew up in Western Massachusetts, there's just like waterfalls all over the place, and we would always like pick raspberries and then go swimming in these waterfalls. So this wine always reminds me of that because it's so clean.
Yeah.
It's so fresh. It's so bright. It's so crisp because all of our wines are fermented dry, so 0 grams of sugar.
Oh.
Naturally.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And so, because I feel like people don't actually want sweet things in their wine.
I don't know.
The palate is changing for the American consumer in a big way.
Really?
Yeah. People are always like, also I think people know the word dry. Yeah. So they ask for that a lot, even if they don't know what it means necessarily.
I don't know what that means, actually.
It just means no sugar.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I think of that. This is my uneducated viewpoint. And like, this is really good for anybody listening and who's like a wine drinker or not, right? I always thought dry meant like notes of dry. Like dry would be described as, you know, when somebody describes a wine, like notes of tobacco. You know, I thought dry correlated to that. And because I like a more berry forward type of wine. I started this podcast literally saying like, I'm from the Bay. And then I still know nothing about wine. Wait, I just drank wine, okay?
I should have brought my red for you because you would love my red because it has a lot of fruit without being sweet.
Yeah. See, I like that note of that of like a berry, right? Like I love a berry. I love a blackberry. I love like a raspberry.
Or like a cherry. Ugh. I love cherry in my red wine.
Yes.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay. I feel like we'll get lost in the sauce a little bit, and I want to make sure that this audience knows about your founder journey because she's got something really cool to tell us at the end. Okay. Restaurant, sommelier, you know, wanted to bring something to the market, right? I I'm so curious. When you're like, okay, I want to bring this RTD to the market, what is the first step that you did? You obviously have an idea.
Oh my God.
I know.
If I knew then what I know now.
Teach me. Please tell me.
It's just, I thought because I worked in restaurants and I sold wine for a living for a decade, I was like, this is going to be so easy to sell a product.
Yeah.
And it has not been. I mean, I went out and just the tremendous rejection. I mean, even when I told my community, other sommeliers, other winemakers that I wanted to do fine wine in a can, so many people were like, that's the worst idea ever. No one will drink that. No one will want that. I originally went around to like all these different winemakers I knew in California and asked them to partner with me because I'm not a winemaker. I'm a somm.
Yeah.
Was laughed out of almost every room until this one guy, Bob Lindquist, who there's this group of winemakers on the central coast of California. They call themselves the Rhone Rangers. They brought varieties from Rhone, France, and planted them. So they're the reason why we grow Syrah and Grenache and Viognier on the central coast. The temperature in the landscape is very similar. Bob has this like crazy story about illegally smuggling vines in his suitcase in the 70s. And so I go to him. He's a famous winemaker, like legendary. He started a brand called Coupe. And I was like, Bob, I want to do this. He's like, let's do it, kid. I'm all about it. He's like, I believe in this like new wave of wine that's coming. So one of our first wines we ever did was French Camp Vineyard Syrah in a can, and it blew people's brains open because that's a very expensive, highly rated wine. And so when we first launched, it was like limited edition collaborations with winemakers. Where's the scale in that?
Yeah.
And there's no brand there. And that's very difficult to do in a consistent way. So our wines say like white, rosé, red. The grapes can change, the region can change, but again, that QR code will take you to exactly and tell you where the wine's from and what it is. And our flavor profiles are always consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah. But basically, I had no clue what I was doing. And without Bob, there would be no Nomadica.
Yeah.
And then I raised a friends and family round for my regulars at my restaurant.
Oh my God. I'm so curious on how you've like navigated that because I'm navigating it myself. But keep telling me, like I'm like, tell me more.
I mean, raising capital, especially for women, is very challenging.
Very challenging.
We don't get the valuations men do. We also, it's really difficult for us too because a lot of raising money is social networking and it's harder for us to access those spaces. Unfortunately, women are over-sexualized or thought of as idiots. Some of the smartest founders I know, the things that investors have said to them like are shocking.
Can I share
Yes.
a story that just happened to me last night?
About
this. I won't say to anybody listening, like I'm not going to call anybody out. I'm not going to call any, but I like an example of this. Okay. I had a conversation. I was like in a room, randomly found myself in a room at this happy hour of like other CPG people, beverage people, like all this stuff. Randomly was here, there, right? And I like saw some friends. I was like, oh my God, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And this friend was introducing me to these other people. And that friend was like, oh, this is just like, she does all these things. Da, 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 da. Oh, she's also starting something too. And then the other person was like, oh, where are you starting? And like, how I kind of like I'm still working on my elevator pitch because I'm like I'm in like research and development brand, like all of that stuff, right? And I was like, oh, I'm kind of like starting a little bit of a beverage, but more of like a supplement. But because I said beverage and I was around people, instead of saying, wow, that's interesting, tell me more, it was, why do you want to do that? And I was like, excuse me. Hold my fucking earrings. Like, excuse me.
You're like, I'm taking
sir?
them off. Yeah.
Like, it was just so, that's cute, kid. And the demeanor, and like, I had this moment being a woman, being like somebody who's first time founder in CPG. Like, obviously I don't have the product on the market yet. I'm in the research and development of it, but even talking about it, it's like, God, you just don't believe in us. And it's like, and it was men to like me as a woman, right? And I was the only woman in this situation. And I just like, but it's what's interesting is if a man went up in that same scenario and he said the same thing, it wouldn't be, why are you doing that? It would be, that's really interesting. Tell me more.
Yes. There's a belief people are willing to go on the journey with you, that women just, we don't get to experience that. I mean, we are asked for extreme levels of due diligence.
Yeah.
That men are not. We have term sheets yanked from us. I mean, it's just the horror stories I hear from women. Countless times I've pitched to investors and they're like, oh, let me see if my wife likes this. And I'm like, oh, so my decade plus as a sommelier running programs that are some of the best in the country mean nothing in this moment.
Yeah.
And the research, the data means nothing to you. But let's see if your wife likes it.
Yeah.
And then
it's just, but I don't even think, I apologize to the audience. This is about to trail away from customer experience, marketing, like anything, founder journey. Well, no, it's on the founder journey. But I am just always so shook and astonished because I'm such a fucking girl's girl and a girl to boys, right? Like, I will support. I'm like, do you want this motherfucking t-shirt off my back?
you are. When I met you, you were like, what's up?
Yeah.
Like,
I will support you. And then I like send you on Instagram. I saw your cans at the theater in Chicago. But, you know, I'm such a like a one for the homies, man. And I will support anybody's dream no matter what. Like, and I will always give advice on it. Like, I might not know all the answers, but I also like to learn from it. So my point is, though, is just like, it's just so fucking crazy to me that it's like, I watch it all the time. The questions that are asked to women are so different to men. And it's not even just in like founder journey stuff. It's even just being an operator too. It's like, it's the e-commerce world, the retail world. It does not matter what world you are in. Everything, it's just, why is it fucking like this? Why is it like this? And like, but we all have to have each other's back. And it's exhausting as fuck, but I love proving a bitch wrong.
right?
I love proving a bitch wrong.
I know. Somebody yesterday, an investor asked me, they're like, why are you going to win above everyone else? I was like, do you realize the chip I have on my shoulder? I was like,
maybe it's like, we just all need the chip, right?
I was like, again, beyond money. I'm not in this for money.
Yeah.
And that is my superpower. That gives me a level of work ethic and drive and like pure psychotic energy that you cannot beat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, my answer actually was, instead of being scared or anything, of like, oh God, I'm not going to answer you. Or like, what? I was like, when they asked, why are you doing that? I was like, because I'm fucking psychotic. Mm-hmm. I was like, you try running 4 fucking companies and
Also,
then wanting to start a CPG brand.
He should talk to you about your background.
But they don't. But that's the thing, is like, most of the time when you're in those conversations, they don't give a shit about the background. They think they know more. You know.
I mean, this is why I have had, because we were the first people to do fine wine in a can, and like it's been quite a journey. Started the brand 7 years ago, but I definitely found my sweet spot with operators as investors, because those people are my people. They are people who built something from scratch. They understand the complications of starting a biz, especially in beverage, which like beverage is just the craziest category ever.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about beverage as a category, right? Like, it is. Everybody says it's so hard, right? And truthfully, I'm very naive on it, because it's like, I've only been in beverage on the operator side, not on the starting side. And like, I'm not doing can. I'm going to do packets. It's
Smart.
more like liquid, just easier to ship.
Smart. Yep.
Own my customer, like that. But let's talk about it. Like, I would love to hear from you, like, on your standpoint. Okay, so you have this RTD of a fine wine. Like, tell me your strategy. Tell me how, after you've gotten your can and you've gotten through those first steps and like now you're going to market, like, what was your go-to-market strategy?
So I'm a big believer in analyzing what your secret skills are. Like, what can no one touch you on? And for me, it's my deep rooted relationships with the trade, with the actual, the somms, the winemakers. And so whereas a lot of my competitors ran to retail first, I didn't do that. I went to the on-premise, which is bars, restaurants, and hotels. I know that I would not be able to raise enough capital to compete, on
like
price
Bergamo
or
like,
like I'm not going to compete with a big wine conglomerate. I'm not going to compete with another brand who's raised $20 million. Like I just and you can't be everywhere overnight. You have to build regionally in small markets. And so I knew that what my superpower would be, I will have the best product in my category, which we are. And finally, a lot of other people have validated that as well, beyond myself. And I wanted to be places where canned wine wasn't traditionally found. So our first big account, like my breakthrough moment, was Ryan Bailey, who just won 2 days ago Best Restaurant by the LA Times for his new restaurant, Cato, downtown. It's a Michelin star restaurant, but he was the wine director at the Nomad Hotel. And I tasted him on the wine. He's a Northern California guy as well. And he was like, I love what you're doing. This is really cool. The wine tastes good.
Yeah.
And it was like, finally, somebody can like see outside the format. Because Soms are very traditional too.
Yeah,
and so just having his validation, his backing, and being able to go to other bars and restaurants and hotels and saying, we're at the Nomad Hotel. We're in the mini bar. We're on the roof there. And people are like, oh, cool, great. I'll give it a try then. Yeah. And so we slowly started building from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're like at Whole Foods. We just went national with Total Wine. We're launching Target next year. I have a few other big things that'll come.
This.
But
this is amazing. Yeah. This is like such an amazing journey from 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think the key here being like in your space, but also just like being a founder and growing your product, slow and steady wins the race.
Yes.
It's like if you're racing to the top and all you're doing is ads and pushing it out, but you're not like actually like thinking about the things and iterating and rebuilding and, you know, taking feedback in and reformulate whatever it is, right? Like it's different for everybody, right? And like I think slow and steady actually wins the race in the end of the day because that creates sustainability for you.
100%. I mean, a few years ago, I lost a huge account. It went away overnight because somebody spent a lot of money to get that account. And it was a very painful lesson in having sustainable foundations that cannot disappear. Mm-hmm. Whether that is your D2C strategy or your wholesaler strategy. Like it's been essential. And now, you know, we grew 20% this year, but then we're going to grow 100% next year just because of all the hard work that my team and I have done on that sustainable foundation.
Yeah. God, I feel like we can talk about this for so long, but we're actually almost at the end of the road. So I want to make sure we get to this bonus part.
Okay.
What's next?
Well, so we launched boxed wine this year, which is crushing. I'm so excited about that as a category. Literally, yes. I'm doing a Slap the Bag campaign.
Yes,
also,
I love it.
It's inspired by mythical chef Josh, who I had sent some, and he's like, he posts this video of him just shirtless. Do you know who this is? He's like a YouTuber. He's like super buff chef guy. And it's just him slapping the bag shirtless. And we got great response. So I was like, I'm leaning in hard here, which I'm really excited about because price point is a big reason why a lot of people don't drink wine. And that's essentially the equivalent of a $10 bottle value for organically farmed California juice. Stupid. Awesome. We just launched a rosé yuzu spritz as well this summer.
Love yuzu.
And it's 7% alcohol, a little lighter than this guy. I wanted to make like a White Claw competitor with minimally processed ingredients. We're doing a test right now in all the Whole Foods in California, and it's going very well. I think you'll see it some more places soon. And then I'm opening
Whole Foods Chicago?
Actually, that's one of
the
Whole Foods in Chicago are some of our best stores in the country. Yeah, like we're talking 8 to 10x average category velocity for our wines there. I love Chicago. You know how to eat, you know how to drink, you know how to hang.
I know. It might be 13 degrees right now,
but that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Go out more. And then I'm opening up a restaurant in LA in Silver Lake.
I love it. I'm so stoked for you. I'm so proud of you. I think this is amazing. And honestly, this is why you're a baddie, because you don't just do one thing. You do all the things and you create the flywheel. And that is the important thing as a founder.
And everything feeds into itself.
Yep.
Yes. Wine.
Wine, exactly. It's like my flywheel is different. It's like it's content agency product, right? Like all of those things. But yours is very, wine, but like own the customer, retail, slow and steady, restaurant, different formats too. Different formats than restaurant. And it's like the slow and steady will run the race.
100%. And also I think treating your consumers like intelligent beings.
Yes.
I feel like so many people are in this space where they're like, millennials and Gen Z don't care. They don't want to know anything. They will fall for pretty branding. And it's like these cohorts are highly educated and are advertised to constantly. If you're underestimating their ability to succinctly filter information, like
Absolutely.
you're missing out.
Absolutely. I actually, like, let's pause on that real quick because I do want to make one point because it is such a valid point that you're bringing up. What's so interesting is like on the market, just in wine, right? Like you think you have boomer, you have millennial, right? Like who are probably most people think are those traditional buyer, but now you have Gen Z entering the marketplace and they have been entering the marketplace, right? But if you look at the buying habits of a boomer, millennial, Gen Z, and just even like buying something on TikTok shop or an eyeliner, right? To convince a Gen Zer to purchase, and even some millennials, you have to, one, socially influence, but you also have to be authentic. You have to be real about it. It's not just about your branding. What is that experience? What is that brand experience you're building, like on your can or around your product, the community? Because if you don't have any of those pieces of the pie, the Gen Z that's coming onto this market aren't going to purchase you.
No.
And you're not going to create that sustainability.
It's crazy. You have to be, if you're F&B, you have to be great tasting, branded well, priced well. Like you have to hit on every single thing, tell a story, have an element of authenticity to you because they can sniff out bullshit in a second. And so I think it's never been easier to create a product and bring it to market, but never more challenging than it is at the moment.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's consumer behavior that's going to like buy it. Like there's so many marketing campaigns out there that are just for the sake of marketing it, but not actually true and authentic.
Yes.
And across many categories.
Yes.
I'm not just talking food and beverage. What's the one thing, the biggest thing you've learned in your founder journey that you would want to leave the audience with?
Just do things. I think if you think too much about what you're doing, you can become paralyzed. And so few people have great ideas and never see them come to life because they don't just do them. You just have to be an executor.
Execute. Yes. And follow through.
Yes.
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 Yes. Kristin, it was such a joy. I wish we could talk even longer.
Jess,
but
I wish we could drink all the wine together forever.
I'm down. We'll do this again.
Okay, we'll do this again.
Come to Chicago.
Deal.
We can go to the bar in the Whole Foods and drink Nomadica together.
Now we're talking.
I know. Cheers to the audience.
Cheers to our amazing audience.
I appreciate everybody tuning in. Kristin, where can the audience find you?
So online at explorenomadica.com, Whole Foods, Total Wine, slew of independent retailers. We, at the end of this year, will officially be launched in about 40 states across the U.S. So if we're not in your state, we will be very soon.
I love it. I love it. I'll put everything in the show notes, and I appreciate everybody tuning in for another week of Above the Fold, and we'll see you the next time. Yay.
Dang, we've made it to the end of the podcast and you're still here. So thank you so much for listening to Above the Fold podcast. For the best of this episode and every episode, be sure to follow us on Instagram and my YouTube channel. And for deeper dives on the secrets to brand success, don't forget to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Sunday Postcards. All right, my dudes and gals, see you next week.